Alrighty, guys. So, today I have had a one-on-one session. Now, I do think today, so I'm going to start off by talking about the session itself, and then I've got a few notes that I want to just keep in my diary journal entry in the future that I want to keep in mind for future one-on-one sessions. Okay, so we had Humdu going out on his own. He started off by trying to find out what was going on with that pit fiend they had unleashed. So they went to the town that he was last seen in, Tours-en-Savoy. They saw that it was entirely in ruins, entirely infested with this black tentacle, evilly hellish stuff. Lots of imps running around, possessed villagers. He approached Skazkizkin, the pretender, the bitter eater, the pit fiend, to see if he might be willing to join them in their fight against the corpse weaver. Skazkizkin had offered a deal to Humdu, saying that if he became his envoy to speak to other mortals in the realm, that Skazkizkin would then consider giving Humdu what he desired. And so Humdu said that he's going to wait on it. He's going to bring this to the rest of the party before any final decisions are made. And Skazkizkin did give a free piece of knowledge to Humdu. He gave a hint that there is possibly a traitor somewhere along with someone that Humdu believes to be a friend or an ally right now. Skazkizkin has suggested that there is someone who will betray them in their midst. Skazkizkin then said that their first duty, if they were to accept, would be to seek an audience with the current Lord of Borzu, the vampire Levesque, who is currently a minion, a lieutenant general under the influence of the corpse weaver. He has basically suggested that if they accept this position as his envoy, they will be given an offer that they can take to Levesque that Skazkizkin is almost certain would have the vampire no longer side with the corpse weaver and instead fight alongside the forces of good, if you will. But at this point, they would have evil bandit werewolves fighting alongside them, a tribe of savage orcs, this demon of war incarnate, and now a vampire. So they're very quickly not becoming the good side, at least if they get all these people that they end up fighting alongside with. But yeah, no decision was made on that front. It was, put in the back burner. Then Humdu came back with all this information and informed Grizzletick that he had some concerns about the allies that they had made and that there may be someone they have to keep an eye out for. He then informed Grizzletick that this should all be kept secret, not to worry the Duke or anyone else to spread any fear. So he told all this to Grizzletick, who had seemed to be keeping something to himself after hearing all this information. Then he went out to meet with Gobgank, and he was told about a new rival tribe of orcs, the Doraptoridas. They went out, they fought and killed them. They killed the leaders, Durgash, Grok, and Snizzo. Killed all of them, then confederated the rest of the orcs into Gobgank's army. So now he's got a proper unit of cavalry that he can use in his fight against the corpse weaver. And Durgash had wielded a powerful magic item, the Worm Lance, that Humdu was given as the the benefit, the bonus, the prize for helping Gobgank in his acquisition of this new tribe. And that was about all we got, or that was everything that we did in this session. It was pretty quick, but a fair amount got done. And now I want to say some of my notes I have about concerning just one-on-one sessions in general, particularly things that I want to remember in the future. Okay. Oh, actually, first of all, for that orc fight. So this whole session, I didn't have like a ton of ideas or stuff prepared. So I kind of just like whipped this up last minute just to have something to do this one-on-one session with. But immediately after the session, I had some ideas for things that I know I wanted to do differently in the future. For one, the orc battle. It ended up just being, okay, here's some blocks of hit points walking towards you, and then you walk up to them, and then we just roll a bunch of dice until someone dies first. Which, to be fair, I started doing this was my first session where I tested out just giving all the HP straight up, and then just counting down from that. I do think ultimately I am a fan of that. I'm going to stick with that in the future because I do think it just makes combat feel more real. There's none of this me changing the HP or even considering that might be a thing I'm doing. Now you straight up know their HP. You know when or if they are going to die. And you know, like, if they start winning and it looks like you're going to start losing, like, you should run away. There's no changing nothing to make things easier for you. Like, everything is set in stone. Also, I do think it allowed for some more tactical decisions, knowing that this enemy is specifically at, like, 3 HP, and there's a very high percentage chance that you can walk over here with this guy and kill him with this one last attack. I do think just made for like a more thought out decision rather than just like hearing he's bloodied, he's wounded, maybe I should try attacking this thing. There were very concrete decisions being made on very like palpable, obvious like factors in the battle. So I do think I'm going to stick with that. Subtracting definitely just takes more time and is harder, but I think the more I do it, I'll just become a good subtractor, hopefully. I'm going to learn how to subtract 17 from every single number, just like that. It's not going to take me 15 seconds to do some mental math like I'm back in second grade. So that was that combat. The orc battle specifically, I know for the future ones, I'm not just going to do these orcs walk up to you and fight you and then you just roll dice at each other. I'm going to lean much more heavily into the angle of this being a performance combat. That you are not just fighting to reduce all the other guys to 0, but you need to both beat and kill all the other guys. And before you do that, you need to impress all the other orcs. So there will have to be moments where instead of just doing damage, you might have to do deliberately like ineffective moves in order to do stuff that looks cool and looks impressive to all the other orcs. So there will actually be like decisions and balancing you're gonna have to make, like, instead of just punching this guy in the face until he dies, should I try doing some wrestling moves and grabbing him and jumping off of the ropes with the whole some Nacho Libre type moves or something, which I think will just make things much more interesting to play, much more narratively fun to just be a part of. I think it's going to just make the experience way, way better in every single way. And I think it'll just make it more tactically difficult and more interesting in that way too. And I think it'll fit with the whole, you're trying to excite these orcs and you're not just trying to kill their leader for the sake of assassinating someone, but you are straight up trying to convince all these other orcs that they should fight for you and not for their leader. Okay, so the other thing concerning the one-on-one session, I've done this in the past. I wanted to try something new this time, but I'm definitely going to go back to always having a sidekick just straight from the start to accompany the player. which reason I didn't do it this session is I knew he was eventually going to get up with Gobgank and have him as someone to like fight alongside as, and I didn't want to have like an entire party following him around doing like for him to have to like manage and keep track of. But sidekick, someone that can both rescue you, God forbid you end up in a horrible situation, or that can also be rescued, someone that you end up having to care about to some extent, someone that you can just always have to talk to whenever anything that you might want to just have someone to role play with in situations where you want to express something to the DM without necessarily having to just straight up say it. You can now express your thoughts and concerns through your character, which is pretty not impossible, but a lot less natural if you just don't have someone next to you that you can talk to. Someone you can specifically make plans with. You can tell them to go around over here while you go in through the front. Which, that's just a lot of D&D, is making plans and then seeing them fall apart when you try to act them out. And also, just the NPC, your sidekick, I can, as the DM, suggest or hint or push you towards investigating things that you otherwise have like not picked up on or have any interest in investigating. I realized that was kind of a problem. So something I just knew from the start from D&D in general is it's way too easy to be subtle with details, and that it's just always better to be obvious. And I feel like if there's ever a situation where there's not a sidekick, then I just need to do the whole cinematic, like zoom in on things that are important and maybe interactable with, which not to force the player to interact with those things, but just to nudge them into the direction of letting them know, like, hey, this could conceivably be an option. Like, this is something you might want to check out. Especially because, like, with a party, when you have 4 people, then it's a lot more likely that someone out of those 4 people will pick up on the description you gave and then say, like, maybe I should go check out that thing. Which, again, I feel like with 4 people, it works a lot more naturally. You don't have to be super over the top with it. The player can still feel clever with the idea that they picked up on it. But yeah, one-on-one sessions, there's just not even that opportunity. You just got to be upfront and obvious about everything. So that was the sidekicks. Definitely going to include those. Okay, the other thing is it just goes way, way, way faster. Like, the amount of content I had prepared, I think could have comfortably filled up with 3 hours if I had 4 players. And honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if this would have been the type of session, had I have 4 players, that we would have been, like, pushing that time limit and I would have had to start, like, wrapping stuff up quickly. But with just one other player, we like didn't even scratch the like hour and a half mark. We didn't even get to 90 minutes by the time I just had run out of stuff. So I definitely have to keep in mind for the future that one-on-one just so much more incredibly faster than with a group. So that I've got a couple of both concerns and things that I think that will allow for that you don't otherwise have that luxury in a group game. So for one, you don't, at least in a group game, basically never have the time to like indulge in poetic descriptions of stuff. Like in a 4-player game, when you're in combat, you just got to keep things moving. You just got to tell people like, okay, so you stab him, great. Okay, he starts bleeding, your turn. Okay, so you hit him with the mace, great. You break a bone. Okay, and now your turn, what do you do? Okay, you attack. Okay, you hit him, he bleeds. And you just got to like, you don't have time to sit there and talk about the crunch of the sound of his armor as you break through and the chain links start flying out and the colors of the bruises and the specific way that the blood oozes and all of that. But in a one-on-one session, you can really indulge. You can sit down and take your time with the description of everything, both the places they are going, the specific actions they are taking. You can really get flowery with the language and take your time and smell the roses and all that. So I'm definitely going to keep that in mind for future one-on-one sessions. The other thing that so the well okay so the other thing that I know I want to do in the future is focus much more on the personal story and personal relationships rather than things involving the central tension, which this session pretty much everything was like in some way related to or tying into the main plot as a whole, which I definitely think I want to keep this with like who are the NPCs that this character specifically has connections to, and things that are first and foremost connected to the character and things that this and only this character cares about. And then the secondary can be like how these things are tangentially related and how they tie into the main plot rather than doing that the other way around. Okay, so the other thing, my concern with one-on-one sessions that I have a problem with is in the group session, there's always times that the players are arguing with each other where they'll just spend 5, 10, 15 minutes talking amongst each other, saying like, we should do this, no, we should go here, and then do this, because what if blah, 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 blah. And so when everyone is like discussing and talking and making their plans, that gives the DM time to just look over their notes and decide how they might want to change the remaining parts of the session to make things both more interesting and narratively satisfying and cohesive and all the other ways that you can make a story better. I find that those times where the players are busy and arguing is like the perfect downtime for the DM to figure out all that stuff. So, for example, maybe at the beginning of the session, the players decide to just walk into the town and talk to the blacksmith to help so-and-so repair an item, which is going to be, something that you just entirely did not have anything prepared for as the DM. You just start doing your improv conversation as the blacksmith and having the players get whatever kind of connection to him at all. Then towards when the players are arguing and you're sitting down and looking over your notes and realize and like coming up with what has happened so far in the session and trying to tie it in with what's going to happen towards the end of the session. Maybe you realize that the players are going to rescue a prisoner at some point from a band of goblins towards the end of the session, and originally the prisoner was just going to be Joe Schmo, random commoner guy with whatever connection to someone or something, but instead you decide like, okay, what if instead the goblins captured the blacksmith while the players were off doing whatever, and now I can sort of tie him back into this ending part and make everything feel like it's going full circle, because I really think that idea of like not knowing where the improv starts and where the prepared notes starts and where that ends, and keeping that magic, I feel like that's that very unique to D&D feeling you want to capture of not knowing what like the players had created and added to the story and how that tied into what the DM had prepared, and like all of that of a line being blurred and really like improv and prepared story content all being like one and the same is really that juice, that good stuff. which yeah, in the group games you get that opportunity when everyone's arguing and you can look at your notes. But in the 1v1 game, you're constantly figuring stuff out and interacting with the player. You have zero downtime to think about how you might want to tie in stuff from the beginning of the session towards the end of the session. Like maybe if you just think of something at the spur of the moment and you're just like, that would be perfect, then you can like add that to the story. But that's really that kind of like lightning in a bottle type of one in a million. Like you just got to be thinking cleverly and have that clever thought at the right exact time. So most of the time you are just gonna 100% be committed to the notes that you have written down and sort of have that stuff that you had prepared come up over the course of the session. So I do think when it comes to the one-on-one session, it matters a whole lot more that the stuff that you have prepared is good and cohesive and all ties together much more so than the group sessions. Okay, so yep, that's about all I have for this one. I will catch you guys later.